Oh. This should tell you where I'm at. Y'all know I love 40K. I am spent. I'm spent, my bros. I just want I just want 10th edition to get here, man. I just want 10th edition to get here. I'm sitting here trying to stay interested in 40K because I love the game and it's not happening. I feel terrible. Because, 10th is still months away. 10th is still months, a month away. And so I paint and I build stuff with the extra stuff I get from magazine. I don't know, it's turned out pretty nice. I'm kind of happy with it. I'm still going to add some pieces. June's in about 2 weeks, and it's coming at the very end of June. So it's a month and a half away, which means until the point where we actually get to play a game of it is forever and ever away. It's killing me, man. No, I'll be honest, I love 40K. Y'all know I love 40K. I love it. I'm just so spent right now because I feel like I'm just spinning my wheels waiting for stuff to happen. It's killing me. I want to paint models, but I don't want to paint models. So I'm painting my Age of Sigmar models. Finally getting these bad boys painted up. Trying to get some Age of Sigmar. I'm trying to get my Age of Sigmar. I'm painting my ogres. Getting some terrain built up. Trying not to get overly hyped about all the hype, because there's all the hype. There is all the hype. Every last bit of the hype. There is so much hype. And I mean, I'm hyped. I'm very hyped about the whole situation. I think it's going to be great. I can't wait to play it. Every time I see these new the new layouts and the new ideas and the new stuff, it's like it looks really great. All the new rules look really cool. And I end up just finding other things to dig into. Like tonight, instead of doing any research for tonight, what did I do? I played Hearthstone all night. Well, thanks for coming in, Mr. Fish. I appreciate you. I really do. Yeah, when you talk about getting that paint scheme down for that new 10th edition army, I've got this really great paint scheme for my other set of Marines, and I hate it. And I've got like 20 or 25 models painted with the new paint scheme, and I think I'm going to strip them. But I'm not going to strip them until I try the alternate paint schemes. I have this great idea for a red and black paint scheme, going back to my original concept. And I'll go back to that. And if that works, then I'm going to probably strip my gray and purple dudes and repaint them in this red and black concept. No. I want to talk about it because here's the funny thing. I don't want to say like I'm not excited because I am super excited. Like I'm like honestly super excited for 10th edition. Like I'm on pins and needles. I want 10th edition so bad. It's funny because the conversations I've been in have been talking about what's wrong with 9th. Everybody's talking about, oh, this is going to be so overpowered in 10th, and this is going to be this in 10th. And you have no idea what 10th is going to be. And the most of the people I hear talking the most are the people that have only started playing in 9th. And so they have no actual idea. And I don't mean this to sound like a jerk, but you have no idea what it's like to go from one edition to another. You've only played over the last 3 years. You've only played in 9th edition. That's the only edition you know. And you're talking about, oh, it's going to be like this. It's going to be like that. It's going to be this. It's going to be... You have no idea. Because I will never forget. I came back into the game at the beginning of 8th. And that was, first off, I came in at the beginning of 8th. So I came in just as 7th was turning into 8th because all the hype around 8th and the new rules, it excited me. They were streamlining the rules. One of the biggest things that had kept me out of getting back earlier was the clunkiness of the rules. Because again, I had left during the 3rd into 4th, right in there. The dawn of the Tau and the Necrons really becoming a full-blown faction. I got out right around then. Because at that point, the rules were already just ridiculous. And I was finding it confusing. And then kids and models and paint and lead. And, okay, I got to get out. So I come back. in the 8th. My kids are older. The rules are better. They're showing how the rules are so complicated and they're not going to be as complicated. And I'm stoked. I'm so freaking excited. And I get into 8th. We played 8th for 3 years and it was fun. It was it had problems. A year of Knights just dominating the meta. And if it wasn't Knights, it was Tau. And if it wasn't Tau, it was Eldar. That Yanari cancer that it was for like the first year. Until they got the White Dwarf that came out that nerfed them into non-existence. And then the nerf that hit the Knights that killed them. It was funny. It was like, the nerfs that came down in 8th weren't just like, it's not a little nerf. No, we're going to bring a freaking battering, just a battering ram and just destroy your entire codex because you're wrong. And by the end of 8th, things were mostly balanced for the most part. Psychic Awakening kind of did some things. There was a brief period where Death Guard were suddenly the biggest bugaboo on the planet again. They were just, oh God, you can't stop them. They were great. I loved them, but they were a little bit broken. They were a bit broken. And then 9th came out. And I remember in the months leading up to 9th, once we found out we were getting 9th edition, people were looking at the rules. And I remember they're getting rid of Overwatch. This game is going to be nothing but melee. Blah, blah, blah. Really? You really think that? Because I mean, it's funny. You look at it now, and some of the things, some of the conclusions people jump to with the little bit of information they had, in hindsight, they're hilarious. Oh, guns are not going to be a thing anymore. The game's going to be entirely about melee. And I had somebody try to defend that to me even like earlier today, and I'm like, really? Tell that to the Tau army that doesn't care about your melee and was on a tear. It's one of the most devastating armies that doesn't have melee and just shoots. Or, I don't know, how about the 9 months of Drukhari domination where nobody could touch them until the AdMech came about? So you had two shooty armies that were shooting the hell out of each other. I mean, and now we're looking at, Iron Hands being one of the rootinest, tootinest, shootinest armies there are. And like, well, what about Custodes? Okay, yes. Custodes are a mainly melee army because they don't have big guns. But the shooting they do have is pretty good. But they're also like elite bodies that are meant to come in and wreck things in body. Okay, that's fine. Fair. I'll give you that. And then they were like, what about Blood Angels? And I'm like, Blood Angels were a mid army. They were a mid army for most of the only time they were, oh my gosh, top of the pops was during the period of time where they gave everybody armor of contempt. Hey, we realize we've given everybody too much armor penetration, and so nobody plays the Imperium anymore. So we're gonna give everybody in the Imperium some armor protection. Oops. What about the Votan? They were a shootinist army. Huh. Well, they've got berserkers. Yeah, they also have beam weapons and particle weapons, or whatever their things are called. They are a rootin' tootin' shooting army. Don't tell me they're not. And they're like, well, what about sisters? Okay, sisters. Yes, sisters have a lot of melee. Okay, fair. I don't play a lot of sisters. I know they were supposed to be really, really good. I only played them once. It always seemed like they got their asses beat every time I saw them in tournaments. They're supposedly really good at the national scene, but locally they never really did much. I saw a couple tournaments where they did okay. I faced them one time, like the entirety of ninth. I faced them like once. They're like, well, what about Creations of Bile? Creations of Bile, I'm sorry. Okay, yes. Chaos Marines were pretty good at melee, but they weren't topping a lot of. Creations of Bile top charts for like a month until somebody figured out, hey, we can shoot them. I mean, the terrain made shooting an issue, but at the same time, shooting was the issue because my brother, what is up? What is going on, Rob? I mean, shooting was always the issue. What was the first nerfs they put down? Oh yeah, indirect fire. We got to put a nerf on that, and we're gonna put a double nerf on that. Oh, and Mont Ka, we got to nerf that. I mean, they went. We're gonna nerf the shit out of the Tau. We're gonna nerf the shoot. I mean, they went after all this. There was never any nerf to melee that I know of. There was nerfs to shooting all along the board because shooting was too strong. And it's just funny to me because I mean it was fine. A lot of it was perfectly balanced. I'm not gonna sit there and claim, oh, it wasn't called for. No, it was ridiculous. I took a Tau army and played against. I want to say it was a Marine army. A friend of mine brought to the table. He just wanted to try some stuff out, and I told him I've got to work on I got to work on a tournament army. He's like, oh, that'll be fun. It'll be great. It'll be a real test for the army. And I shot him off the table in 2 rounds. There was nothing left. The 9th edition game I played against Commodore. I was playing Space Wolves, a melee-stricken army. And it was my Eradicators that did a shitload of damage. It was my Eradicators just did lots of naughtiness. So, I mean, that's shooting. Oh, and was it Death Guard I played against you? That's right. It was my Death Guard against your my Death Guard versus your. It wasn't my Wolves. It was my Death Guard with all their indirect fire, shooting, and spitters. Flamers. I mean, come on. to try and say it was good for Melee because Melee was finally usable, which was fine compared to 8th, where Melee was like, no. 8th edition was like, we don't want you to bring put your chain swords down, play a different army. I mean, there got me into other armies because I was playing Death Guard, which were a pretty heavy melee army at first, and Space Wolves, which are a melee army, and I gotta go, how about the Guard? You know? Or how about my Knights? You know, it's just funny. Is that but you look at the guys right around the end of 8th, all they were talking about is, oh, it's going to be the melee only. It's going to be a melee only melee. It's not. So we have no idea what this edition is going to be like. What do we know? What do we honestly know? The only things we know that we can draw any type of real conclusion about is that if numbers stay true, there's going to be a lot less lethality on the tables. You're not going to have a 2,000-point army on the table, and at the end of 1 have a 1,200-point army, and at the end of 2 have a 700-point army, and at the end of 3 have a 250-point army where you're scrambling to get on objectives. That's not going to be the case of the game anymore. Right now, it's like, I mean, was it 2 years ago? I want to say it was. Not this last LVO, but I think it was the LVO before that, before the Orcs got nerfed, where the national championship, the top table championship game between Manny Chiba and some other guy, I don't remember who was in the match. I just remember it was Orcs versus Admech. And the Orcs literally tabled the guy, or nearly tabled Manny, like just wrecked him to just obliterated him.
How horrible is this?
At the end of the top of round. I mean, he went first. End of top of round 1. There was like less than 500 points on the table for the Admech player to play with. It's like, what? And that's healthy? No, that's not healthy. So I'm looking forward to the lethality coming back. After playing 40K for years, the 9th edition, and I'm not complaining about 9th edition. I love 9th edition. It's fun. But if we're being honest, it doesn't have a problem. Yeah, it has a lethality problem. In that armies die. Just you're even if you're playing to the mission, you're playing the table your opponent. Because tabling your opponent as a side effect of winning the game.
This one sounds fun, right?
Yeah, absolutely, Kami. That's one of the big things I'm seeing. I mean, my big thing that I'm noticing is that you're going to see a lot of because vehicles are going to be more durable. And with vehicles, you get more shots, you get bigger guns, you get all the good stuff. But vehicles aren't able to hold objectives very easily. They aren't able to perform actions. Hey, it's Big Al, Master Modeler. So you're gonna see, the big tanks will be on the board. I mean, if you look at what they did for Admech, the way they talk about the Baneblade, you're going. If you go by what they're hyping, now that's the other thing to remember. They hype. This is all hype for them. So they're going to pick, the sexiest looking stuff to hype out there. And they're going to hype it. So you're going to see vehicles. You're going to see a lot more vehicles. I mean, that's fair. 9th edition was the edition of, hey, I bought a $100 model. And it's sitting on my shelf because if I put it on the table, it's 250 points that'll be shot off the table in the first round. Nobody brings vehicles anymore. There are so few lists that bring vehicles anymore. It's ridiculous. And as a company, again, you got to think about this as a company. That's got to hurt them. Because tanks are $100 models or $150 models. and nobody's playing them, so nobody's buying them. So it's in their best interests to make tanks viable again. So how do you do that? You bring up their toughness and you bring down a point of AP on everything. You bring the strengths on weapons down. And then vehicles survive. But vehicles survive, but they can't perform actions. So they don't score points. Because from the way they make it look, all of your abilities to score points other than objective holding is going to be involved with doing actions. You need infantry to do actions. You need tanks to withstand the battle. Sorry about that. So I think we're going to see very much a mixed arms type game where it was back to what it was in the earlier days, where when you brought Marines, you brought a bunch of Marines, a dreadnought, and a couple rhinos to move your guys up the board, and a couple predators. I think we're going to see those days. I think we're going to see a couple dreadnoughts, a couple transports, and a couple assault vehicles with a bunch of dudes to hold objectives and maintain control of the board. And I think in this edition, from everything they've shown so far, now again, they haven't shown a tremendous amount. They've shown just enough to get everybody talking. All right, cool. Yeah, they are, but you don't see them on the table because a handful of multi-melters and they go away and do nothing. I think increasing them to a toughness 10 or whatever they're going to increase them to is going to make them even more survivable. I'm interested to see what we're going to do because I think the game is going to be more of a. I think the way they're going to push the story and the way that we're going to push the objectives and the way they're going to push the game, I think it's going to be a board control type game where it's not as important to kill people. Yeah. What's the toughness? Baneblade. Oh, shit. I like the way you think. I think what we're going to see is we're going to see armies where it's about controlling the board and controlling movement, like Commodore's saying there. It's going to be about pushing your opponent, bullying your opponent on the board, and that's going to be part of it. I think it'll be interesting to see. I definitely think it'll be very interesting to see how they handle it. I'm excited. If you couldn't tell, I'm excited to see what they're going to do for everything. I'm definitely looking forward to a game that's just not. It's funny. 8th was Hero Hammer. There was no restrictions on the number of characters. You could have, multiple captains. You could have multiple characters. And so snipers were a big thing, but characters were a big thing. And it really was a bunch of Hero Hammer. I agree. I very much agree with you, Mythos. I kind of liked the complexity of AdMech, but I was kind of turned off by it because it's like you've got so many things you're trying to keep track of when you're playing a game. The last thing I need to be able to have to track of is 10 different floating buffs that do this or that or this. It's one of the reasons I have a problem with Necrons, because they have that same sort of like the floaty buff thing. It's like, well, which buff is up for this round? And that's kind of a pain in the ass. It's one of the big problems I have with doctrines, because it's just like another thing you have to kind of keep track of. And there's already so much to keep track of on the board. You got to keep track of your wounds, your hits, any floating buffs you already have, stratagem, strategy points, what round you're in. There's so much to keep track of in a game. And that's what makes the games go longer and longer and longer and longer. And yeah, in competition, 2 hours, 45 minutes, that's where you cut games off. But if you actually go to like tournaments that aren't like pro-am tournaments, you're seeing games that are ending at 2:45 and they're in the third round because there's so much. Yeah, free blade X all your bucks. You know, Ben, you're absolutely right. The idea if they made tokens, like when they decided to do all these freaking buffs, like when you buy exactly, I say that because I have the same sort of thing for my Death Guard, not Death Guard, my Magakin of Nurgle. They have a set of different buffs, and when you buy their cards, they had a card in there you could flip, a set of cards you can flip to keep track of like an over, because your buff changes, because there's the dial, there's the Nurgle dial that changes every round. It would be. And that's the thing. It's like having some way to track them. And admittedly, it's just another stuff to make. You could make them. Like I had to do that for my knights. Anybody in the local area that saw me play my knights at the tournaments, the last few tournaments of 2022, I literally had a set of cards that I had a stack of like 10, 15 cards that I was literally, okay, this guy has this buff, this guy has this buff, this guy has this buff, and I'm literally putting the cards, it's going from this guy onto him, it's going from this guy onto him, just to keep track of where all my buffs were going, and who they were stacking, and how they were stacking, and where they were going. And if they had tokens that you could buy, they've got overpriced dice sets, they've got overpriced card sets. Why didn't they have token sets that you could buy for your army, where you could go, hey, I like this, I like that, I want this token, I want that token. Now, admittedly, AdMech had, if you bought their deck of cards, they had the different Doctrina, and I forget what the other thing is called, but they had the different, so you had at least cards to play with. And you had to, because you like, if I'm playing Mars or I'm not playing Mars, but I'm playing, oh my God, there's the idea of playing Mars in 9th edition, a Mars Skitarii veteran army, the amount of floating buffs that change every round, and how they affect, and how some stack, some don't stack, some, depending on who the commander is and who the warlord is and where he is on the board, some are affected and some aren't affected by the negative part. It's just like, oh my God, it's such a pain in the ass to keep track of. It's just, and I don't need my game to be, I roll a d6, I roll a 5, I win. I don't need it to be that simple. But in their attempt to try and add complexity and differentness among the factions, I think in some cases they overcorrected. I think what they did to AdMech was, well, that's an entirely different argument, and I still stand by that. we'll come back to that one. That's a conversation all of its own. That is entirely a conversation of its own. Oof. We're gonna start a fight here tonight, Kami. I think in their desire to make the armies not all samey, they tried too hard, and in some cases, they made them so different, they made them unfun to play. And in some cases, they went for lore, and that was cool, but sometimes the lore just made them just. You're not going to hear me argue with you on that one. I've been saying it for years. Why they don't go to a D10 system? How much more difficult is it to get D10s rather than D6s? You just open up the numbers a little bit, and suddenly you can make real differences. Now, the argument is, if you make the die bigger, you can make the swinginess much more swingy. And that's not an untrue statement. That's not an untrue statement. So what do? Do you go to percentiles? Well, that's not going to work. That's too much die rolling for percentiles. But yeah, I think going to a D8 or a D10 system, or even a D12, would just be better, because then you could have a baseline human being a strength 3 or even a strength 4. You could have a Marine being a strength 5 or 6, and in Terminator armor, add him a point of strength and a point of toughness. Yeah, the only way to get. Here's what we do. I think we should go back to the original rules produced by H.G. Wells, which involved spring-loaded cannons that fired paper cannonballs, and you only killed the things you knocked over. So it was entirely a game of aiming. Let's take all luck out of it. There's no way to fix. There's no way to fix a game completely. You're still going to have your swinginess. You're still going to have imbalances. It's never going to be perfect. I don't know. 40K is pretty cool. It gets pretty close to where I want it to be as I can get. I'm not unhappy with the world of 40K. I'm more unhappy with the guys that just won't let certain things go and want to make doom and gloom predictions about an edition that they haven't seen this much of. You've seen this much. Let's be real. You've seen almost nothing. How are you going to make a judgment on what this edition's going to be about with the little information you have? Yeah, I mean, that goes, I believe I forget who the wise person at one that said that. But there are two things fandom hate. Specifically, there are two things that 40K players absolutely despise above all other things. They hate change. And they hate things staying the way they are. Oh, and if I have ever uttered a more true statement about 40K 40K fandom, I don't think it's possible. I mean, that's an F in the comments right now, right there. That's an F. You gotta give me an F in the comments for that one because that's some truth. That's some real truth right there. The you know. Mhm. Oh my God, Ben, you. Oh, I need to rub your belly. You're a good boy. Everybody loves Ben and Tina. Don't you even try. You haven't burned no damn bridges. Everybody loves you guys. Come on. Let's not be silly. But I mean, you look at the community online, and there is a reality that you can't really look at the community online to get an honest feel of what the game is like because the loudest voices are just angry boys. They're just angry, 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 angry boys. And I feel bad for them. I feel bad for them to be so angry about something you love. You know, it's one thing. Well, I mean, and it's true. I mean, you look at it. You look at a fandom over the years when everybody knows me knows I'm a huge fan of The Walking Dead, and the amount of hate that its fandom has thrown out there over the last couple years, especially season 7 and 8, where they just they lost their way, the viewership really didn't move all that much. So everybody that was really mad about it, they really didn't stop watching. People say, "Oh, they lost all their viewers." No, they didn't. People were still watching that show. It lasted 11 seasons. People were still watching that show. That is an honest statement there, Mythos. The funny thing is, did you look good point there, Connie. The funny thing is, I was going to say there, Mythos, did you really look at the Guard, the 10th edition Guard update? Because the thing that struck me about it as a Guard player, they weren't kidding when they said that this codex is going to be more of a test bed for 10th than anything else. Because I looked at the rules, and the rules are pretty much everything that they talked about, other than changing some of the stats on the tanks. The basic rules themselves don't look like they're changing that much. I think we got our codex about 6 months early. We were early adopters. We just didn't know it at the time. And that kind of sucks because it's like, oh, come on. That's not, it's not great. I mean, does that fit on there? Yeah, it does fit in there. Excellent. It's not great because it's just like, kind of liked where I was at, and I didn't want to have to immediately, I don't have to change. Wait a minute. When you're the early adopters in the edition, that means you're going to be the first ones to suck when the new codexes come out. Ah, lame. My Guard's going to be lame really quickly. That's the price I paid for getting my Adelan Rough Riders. But I mean, the flip side, this last part of ninth edition, Guard have been one of the strongest armies in the meta right now. They're just whooping everybody's ass. Well, let's be honest, they're not whooping everybody's ass. They're going, kill us, keep killing us. We're still gonna score points. We don't care. Which I don't know if that's better or worse. I really don't know if that's better or worse. It's kind of like, we're gonna die. Yeah, we're still gonna win our points though. No, that's kind of, it's a little disheartening at the same time. Like, my figures are dying in droves, but I'm still scoring all my points. It's like the Guard's whole strategy is how much of a Pyrrhic victory can we win? There is no way, if this is extended campaign, would we survive to the next battle. But hell, that one battle, we all died, but we won. It's like, damn it. Oh, yeah, that's actually, and that's the funny thing. Like, they have not posted any points. They have literally like avoided all talk of points for the most part. So I think it's gonna be funny. I think one of the things we might see, um, I think we're gonna see an overall points increase, like across army wide, like game wide, so that you're not bringing as many models. And that's how they're going to deal with the decreased lethality. You're going to have smaller armies, even at 2,000 points. Because if they keep the points where they are right now, I mean, if they keep the points where they are right now, especially now that gear for most units doesn't cost any points, I mean, I think that's going to be a game wide rule that gear is going to stop costing points for a lot of units. I don't think they're going to do that to Tal because that would make crisis suits actually playable again or more playable. That's the biggest thing holding crisis suits back right now is the fact that every piece of gear doubles or it doesn't double, but it increases in points when you buy multiples. So your best bet is to just put one of everything on it and be done with it. We don't need any synergy on this. Just put one of everything. You're fine. That is a dumb looking model. Why does he have a flamer, a bolter, and a plasma and it's dumb. Ugh. But yeah, I do think that's a thing we're gonna see. I think we're gonna see like I think we're gonna see points go up. I think you're going to see the average points of an army go up, so that a 2,000 point army will field what we would now think around a 1,700 to 1,500 point army. And I'm good with that. I like the idea of an army maybe being a bit smaller, only because there are certain armies that, okay, Guard being one of them. Hey, I'm going to bring 2,000 points of Guard, 60 points a unit. I'm going to bring 100 dudes, and I'm not going to really, that's not going to take away from my desire to bring in tanks. Because the points will still work. Tanks are so cheap dudes are so cheap that the expensive tanks aren't really offset by me having to bring extra dudes in place. But they have also said that, they've kind of made the point that they want to see vehicles more played. So, what are we going to see? An increase in the cost of dudes overall and a slight decrease in vehicles? Or, I don't know. I see a lot of ways it could go. I don't know. I think it's interesting that that's one of the points they haven't at all talked about. Like, the thing is, I think you're going to need more dudes on the field. Again, because we go back to the whole thing is without dudes, you can't do actions. And actions are what you have to do to score points. So you kind of need dudes on the field. Like I said, it's going to be real interesting to see. I'm curious to see how they're going to manage it because there's just a lot you could do. There's a lot that can be done. And they've been very obtuse about it. It's interesting because when they brought out Eighth, they brought out the idea of power, unit power. And that was a big thing. They were talking about, what's the power rating of this? What's the power rating of that? And they talked about power rating as an easy way to get around playing for points. And yet, nobody did. Well, I mean, they did say I have not, Al. I don't have a problem tipping over glue. That's for my wife. They they have said again. I look at like some of the stuff they said when they. I paid a lot of attention to the developer chats. Like I really, really kind of delved into what was going on with the developer chats. I found them absolutely fascinating. I felt the developer chats were an interesting way to keep track of what's going on in the game. Now, and see, that's the interesting thing. The people that are using power, and it's not a knock. I don't want anyone to take this as a knock. The people that are using power levels are the more casual players, because you just want to be able to throw some points down, get your guys going, and get on the field and go. People that aren't crushing. Yeah, it was easy. So that's the whole thing. And there's nothing wrong with that. Again, I want to make the point that there's nothing wrong with it. I think the idea behind it was to make the game more accessible. And I think that's always been 40K's biggest hindrance is the accessibility of the game. You've got the barricade of building figures and painting figures and complex rules and all these different rule books and the amount of figures you need for an army. So there's all these different barriers in that built into the game itself. So the idea of removing barriers by making portions of the army easier, portions of the game easier. It's one of those things that they talk about. They've been talking about with the developer chats and in some of the stuff on the website where they talk about where the combat patrols, they're working on rules so that the combat patrols will all be even with each other and will be able to fight each other right out of the box. Pick up a combat patrol, build it, get it, and go. I can't believe that. Like, I'm looking at combat patrols going, huh? Because that doesn't seem viable to me. But they're working on it. So, I mean, I think the perfect example is you look at the Grey Knights combat patrol and compare that to the Imperial Guard combat patrol. Oh, God, that is just, that's not That's not. No. Or the basic Space Marines Combat Patrol, which is 10 infiltrators, 3 eliminators, 3 3 of the jumpy gigantic cannon dudes. I mean, oh, they did. I missed that line. Thank goodness, because plus or minus a couple models makes a big difference. Oh, because the idea of like that Marine one, or even worse, the Blood Angel one, or the Dark Angel one, one of the best combat patrols out there, the Dark Angel Combat Patrol. Oh my God, that thing just crushes people. The Grey Knights don't need to get stronger, and I say that because I know how powerful they are. I've seen them absolutely wreck face. Grey Knights are really strong. They're really good. The thing is that I don't think anybody needs to get stronger. I think that's the biggest problem. I think that was the biggest problem, honestly, with Ninth, is that it felt like every codex was a new story arc in a Dragon Ball Z season, because it was just like, like every single codex just got more and more and more powerful. When the Tau Codex dropped, it was like, ooh, this is hot. Good point, Ben. And I'm looking forward to see those cards. I really am looking forward. And that's what it comes back to. And I want to reiterate, I am really looking forward to 10th edition. Power creep, yeah, that never happens. No, power creep happens. We know power creep happens. But 9th edition has been the poster child of power creep. Dark Angels being a perfect example of, oh shit, we didn't think that through, did we? They did the Arc of Omens, and people who don't remember or don't know this, they dropped Arc of Omens where they changed what the secondaries were. Then they gave Armor of Contempt to all Marines that don't have a shield. Well, I'm going to run all Terminators in Dark Angels, and I'm going to run them all as first company. So you're -1 AP against my 2-up, 4-up. And I have a permanent transhuman, so you're only wounding me on 4s or better. A natural 4 or better. I don't care if you have a bonus to wound me. You have to roll a 4 or better on the die. And you're going to give me 3 secondaries that I can score on by just sitting here. Which, as a Terminator, my job is to just sit here. Hi! I am a perfect example of an army that doesn't do anything, just sits there and wins by just sitting there. They gave Armor of Contempt to the sisters and then turned them into melee exploding monsters. Yeah, it was. It's like Custodes, except they have transhuman as well. It was just ridiculous. It was absolutely ridiculous. But because they're cheaper than Custodes, you're having like 50 models on the table. It was just, and access to all the separate Marine stratagems, which there's a lot of really good Marine stratagems. You know, you look at like the codexes when they came out, when they dropped the Drukari codex, and the Drukari are like, we're gonna jump in, shoot all our shots, and then run back away. We're gonna kill units, and you're never gonna see us. Oh, well, shit. All right, well then we're gonna do this thing with our AdMech and give them ability to just shoot the shit out of you from across the board with regular dudes and hit you and do tons of mortal wounds. And okay, we're gonna counteract mortal wounds. Then we're gonna do orcs, so they're gonna do indirect fire, and every time we hit and wound, we're gonna get bonuses to. Oh my god! You know, it was this snowball going down the hill. You had Drukari, then Admech, then orcs, then Custodes, then Tau, and you're just watching this snowball get bigger and bigger. It was just like, guys? And they went, okay, hang on, we're going to nerf some stuff. We're going to nerf some stuff. And I like the fact that they had the quarterly nerfs. I like that they went, okay, hang on. We got to back up. Oops. I like that they did that. That is really probably one of the best moves as a company they've done in years. Yes, they will. The interesting thing is that from everything I've been reading and everything I've been seeing, what it looks like it's going to work out with is that first off, day one, Index is going to drop and it's going to have everything in there. And it's going to be online, it's going to be free. All the armies, all the everything, boom, 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 everything will be there. Codexes are going to come out, but unless something changes, the codex is just going to be because people like a hard copy of their stuff, and they might have some extra lore and stuff in there. But just like always, Marines are going to have wolves and dark angels and blood angels. They're going to have access to all the normal stuff, but then they're going to have their own unique stuff because they're the four unique chapters: the dark angels, the blood angels, the space wolves. Well, 5 unique. The Death Watch and the Black Templars. Plus, everybody's going to have their characters. But the big thing is that the way that they're talking, the way that, again, you got to go back to the developers' chats and see what those stuff are talking about. Those armies have extra units. And they might have some restrictions to specific units because they have replacements to those units. Stern Guard, Vanguard vets, that type of thing. But the flip side is 90% of the codex, just like 8th, just like 9th, wolves, angels, they're all going to have access to that stuff. I think the more interesting point is going to be exactly that, is the whole detachments things. I play Space Wolves, but I'm going to play this detachment. I'm going to specifically play this detachment. And this detachment, it doesn't matter if I'm a Space Wolf player or I'm a Dark Angels player or I'm an Ultramarine player, because I'm playing this kind of Space Marine detachment. And so these rules are in effect for my army. So I still have my Space Wolves rules. I'll also have some Space Marines rules. So you'll get past like some of the issues with why would you play Space Wolves? You know, you can't really play a very shooty army then. I'm going to play the detachment that has the shooty bonus, and I'm going to play with shooty wolves. Because in the lore, the Space Wolves are still very shooty. They just also really like melee. I think the bigger thing they need to address is to make the different factions of Space Marines more even. I say this in defense of my best buds army. Because I'm going to be blunt. The Imperial Fists are the heroes of the Horus Heresy. And in modern 9th edition 40K, they are the whipping boys. Wow. And that's not fair to them. All the Marines should be good. Yes, some should be better at certain aspects of what they do, but all Marines deserve to be good. Even the ones I dislike. I'm looking at you, Raven Guard. You little emo bastards. You should be viable and playable. And Marines should be Marines. You say that, Kami, but I was thinking about this the other day. You realize the Sons of Dorn were the face of the first edition? Because that first edition book, Rogue Trader, it's Crimson Fists on that cover. Dark Angels, second edition. Another Son of Dorn in the Black Templars for third. It wasn't until we got, fourth edition that we got the Ultramarines being the poster boys? My Wolves have never been poster boys. They've never been the guys on the cover. Marines should be Marines. Now, admittedly, that's talking to the poster boys of the entire game, but I don't want to see them do to Marines what they did to the Guard, but I could see them doing it. It would probably make me a little mad. Antonio, you and your Thousand Sons loving self need to get out. Wolves. Well said, my man. You know, y'all won't be laughing. Y'all won't be laughing when we get Layman Russ back. Antonio Alcazar, my friends. He's a good man, even if he has bad taste. Doesn't love my Wolves. It's all right. He's allowed to be wrong. I'll allow it. I will allow him to be wrong. It's okay. I'm still looking forward to what they're gonna do for the. I mean, I'm really interested in what they're gonna do with orcs. I've been cleaning up stuff, and I built one of my orcs up just to get some of this gray built and get it on the assembly line to get it painted. I can't wait to see what they're going to do with the orcs. I think the orcs need some love. They need to have something effective, especially since the Guard stole the Endless Green Tide from them. Who knew the Endless Green Tide was talking about camouflage? They're gonna cover Death Guard tomorrow. I really want to look. I really want to see what they're gonna do for like the Death Guard, the Thousand Suns. I saw the Chaos Marines thing, and I was kind of. I'm kind of on the fence with that one. Um, I don't play them very much. I mean, I have an army, but 10th bring a new faction. They haven't had an edition where they didn't have a new faction. Well, wait a minute. Did they have a new faction in 8th? Antonio, you were working there. Yeah, in 8th. You're working in during 8th. Did they have a new addition to the armies in 8th? I don't remember. Because in 7th they added the AdMech, they added the Knights, they added a lot in 7th. No, Death Guard were already around. Death Guard had been around since the beginning, dude. Death Guard are old school. They added a lot of new units to Death Guard. Were Custodians new to 8th? I thought they came in 7th. I could be wrong. I fully admit they could be wrong, but I thought they came in 7th. Chaos Knights, that's a good point. They didn't have Chaos Knights before then. So it was a minor drop. Okay, so that's fair. It was a minor drop. They had the Votan in 9th. Yeah, I was gonna say Custodians came out in 7th, and AdMech came out in 7th. Because their release box was interesting because the Knights and AdMech came out at the same time because the first box set was the AdMech and that was maybe at the really very beginning of 8th, but there was a Necron AdMech box that had armigers in it. Yeah, like I know they originally came out as a heresy army. I remember that because I remember the box looked different because it said, Horus Heresy 40K on it. Forgebane, yeah, that's the one. Yeah, okay, that's fair. That's fair. I mean, it makes more sense that they actually were in with them rather than being their own faction, to be honest. But then they decided to give AdMech big tanks and then make the Knights separately, I guess. I don't know. You can still. They're the one faction. I can stick a knight in and get their abilities too. I like that about them. But yeah, 9th had the Votan, which was, they also had at the end of 8th and the beginning of 9th, they had that massive Sisters refresh. They also had the AdMech on all those new models right at the end of 8th. Like they had that massive addition to their line at the end of 8th. And the rumor is that there's going to be in 9th, there's going to be a huge addition of models to the Votan range. Be cool to see. Huh. It's interesting to think about because if they were to add a new faction, who would they add? I have my personal opinion. I'd love to see them add. I'd love to see them add the Emperor's Children as their own faction, and let Fancy Boy get a model. I'd be all for that. Um, and then they just have now they have all four of the the four demon Primarchs that are aligned. I mean, I'd also love to see a Lorgar, but that's just me. I'd I'd really love to see a Lorgar demon Primarch, but I love the oh man the word bearers. If you're gonna be the bad guys, don't go halfway. If you're gonna play the bad guys, play the real bad guy. If you're not playing Creations of Bile or the Word Bearers, you're not really playing the bad guys in Chaos. So I mean, yeah, I like to see them do. I like to see them do Emperor's Children. I mean, they need to expand the Votan range. They don't need any more Marine stuff. We're getting more Marine stuff, and that's fine. But God, they have so much Marine stuff as it is right now. I'd be okay with them not producing a bunch of new Marine units. Rather than just making new Marine units, let's just do new sculpts of old units. Let's get new sculpts. If you want to really move everybody off of Firstborn, let's give you Primaris sized, Primaris scaled, true scale equivalents. Give me Primaris Blood Claws. Give me Primaris scaled Sanguinary Guard. Give me they're giving me Primaris scaled Terminators, so I mean there's already that. Let's get, the specialty units. Let's just get them out there. Let's just get them scaled up and just move forward. The whole Primaris thing, it's so not a thing anymore. Let's just move forward from it. Let's just move forward and start the healing, my brothers. Let's just start the healing and get back to all Marine bodies matter. You leave those missile boys alone. They're adorable. They're little Nerf cannons. They look great. They're little Nerf cannon rocket launchers. Oh. The flip side is that the box they're in is the only way to get that melee dread, and that melee dread is freaking fantastic. I love the aesthetic, and it's actually really good on the tabletop. The missile boys are just like, what is this? What are you? Dude, it's literally then that's like saying you don't like. Yeah, the Augustus box set, it's what's too clunky? The rocket launcher guys are looking too clunky, or the dreadnought's too clunky looking? Because that dreadnought looks fantastic. I will fight you that one. Oh, you're saying yeah, they do. They should have been in. They should have absolutely. You know what they should have done? If I can be honest, if I could go back to GW and have them redesign those figures, I would have put them in Gravis armor to make them look like the aggressors in body style. But instead of having if look at the aggressors, how they have that rack for the machine gun ones, they have the rack of grenade launchers here. Put the Cyclone missile launcher or a Primaris version of the Cyclone missile launcher on top of them, on top of the back of the armor, and use that to fire missiles. That would have been a much better looking model, I think. But I mean, we didn't get that. We got it's Nerf or it's nothing. I can never I can never look at those guys. I can never look at them anymore and not see that after seeing somebody post that. Well, I mean the tendonitis inbound. I love the ATV, but yeah, oh my god, this guy. Well, he's got a helmet on. He's got a helmet on, and they've got special sound dampening. No, dude, his head's getting vibrated, and he's got enough brass just bouncing off of his shoulder and into his helmet that the whole thing's just rattling. I like the look in the ATV, I really do, but it is really silly. Dave, it is very obvious to see that the guys that design these vehicles have never actually served in the military. It's very obvious to see they've never served in the military because I've been in the real world equivalent of an ATV. I've been in the real world equivalent of the Marine ATV. It's called an FAV. And the guy that's on the back shooting the gun is way above the guy that's driving the vehicle. I'm praying that the Reavers getting some type of rework that make them really good and tense because I love the aesthetics of the Reavers. I love the aesthetics of the Reavers. I think they're probably the coolest looking Marine unit. And they're just so bad at everything they do. They're just not there's like so many other units that do what they do better. It's like, why would I take them if I could just take Vanguard vets? I'm not going to take them. I'm going to take Vanguard vets. They got an actual jump pack. So instead of 9 inches, I got 12 inches. And I get a choice of weapons, not a pistol or a subgun that sucks. I'm going to put a Melta and a chainsword or a Melta and a pair of claws or even a shield and a freaking thunder hammer with them. Oh, they're so bad. They're just so bad. Oh, and I mean, even if they gave them like the ability to forward deploy, they'd be worse than intercessors or worse than infiltrators because they have the same stats, except the infiltrators got a machine gun and get a bubble of you can't come in here. Or you take the infiltrators that go, oh, we got a helix relay. So, the first armor save, we automatically pass. What the hell? Hi, we're Reavers. We're Batman. I mean, they're just aesthetically so cool, but they're so, so bad. And they're bad because they are a victim of codex creep. Because when they were created, they were really good, and then everything designed after them found ways to do what they do. Just you're you're not wrong, but the problem is that they tried to make Primaris cool by creating specialty units that would, in a real world setting, be really cool, but they didn't do anything to make them stand out on the battlefield. Here, you want to make Reavers cool again? Here's the first step to make Reavers cool. If they're more than 12 inches away, you can't target them. Because they're masters of stealth and hiding. If they're in cover, of any sort of cover, if they're in light cover, they're a -1 to be hit, along with a +1 to save. How is it that Reavers aren't as good as Cow stealth suits that are basically the same unit with better guns, but are cheaper. Much cheaper. Riddle me that. Tau stealth suits have a better gun, have better stealth abilities, and better on-table abilities, but are cheaper than Reavers. Why? Reavers were a concept that they never figured out what else to do with it, but then they did an entire set of other Phobos units that are all better than the original Phobos unit, the Reaver. And the problem was they made Reavers elites. Here's the first step to make Reavers better. The first thing you do to make Reavers good, make them cost the same as assault intercessors and make them a troop. You've suddenly got a viable unit again. They're not as good as Reavers. I mean, they're not as good as assault intercessors, but they have the ability to move better than they do. I don't know. These are just the musings of an old dude that has some ideas about 40K. Yeah. Well, that's the problem with their room being right next to the studio. And that being said, my friends, it is 9 o'clock. And I've lost all but two of you anyhow. I think it's you and me, Commodore, and maybe Rob. And that's about it. So we are going to call it here for the night. And we will see all of you very soon. On the bench, I've got a lot of painting. We've been talking about that. I'm working on a bunch more terrain right now. I'm working on somebody's terrain. I did some test pieces that I got to. So basically, Kami, it's you, my brother, and me left in the stream right now. I used somebody else's terrain to test a couple of different techniques so that I could do yours better than I had planned out. You're a late arrival, and you're literally here as we're breaking up. So, as I say, guys, play some games, get some dice in. I got a tournament this weekend. I'm playing guard. We're bringing guard for my last hurrah. This will be the ninth. This will be the last game of 9th edition I play will be this weekend. I will not play 9th edition anymore after this weekend. I'm going to gearing up on painting my Age of Sigmar. I'm going to focus on Age of Sigmar until 10th edition drops. And then as soon as 10th edition drops, Commodore, we're going to meet at your house. We're going to sit down on your table, and we're going to roll a lot of dice and learn them rules so you and I are masters of the game. And then you will be a pro gamer. Because you need that. That being said, I'm Big D. I love you guys so much. Thanks for coming out. Thanks for coming and spending time with me. Big love to everybody. Well, we'll do that. You, me, Jess, the Lady D. We'll sit down, throw some figures, roll some dice, and we will get some stuff worked out. And until next week, my friends, stay epic.